Live.
Hey,
Oh, are we live?
we're live for the daytime edition of Chance and Penner Live. I think this is this is actually the second daytime show that we've had. Do you remember the last?
No. What was that
S-
one?
So the first one we did was Quantumania because we wanted to get in
Ah.
and record while, the presses were still hot on Quantumanium, and then they never got hot, so it didn't matter at all. But yeah,
It cooled down pretty fast.
it cooled down before it ever got hot, and that's a problem for Marvel. But how you doing, man? Good to see you.
Yeah, this is our non-primetime slot.
Yeah, but I
So let's
definitely
mix it
think
up.
I think it was necessary to get on here a little bit sooner so that we could talk about our main topic of today, which is Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. We all saw it.
Yeah, dude, we finally saw it, and yeah, a few days ago. So it's good to sit here and get to talk about it finally. I guess I heard you were not doing so well the past couple days. You were a little
Oh
sick,
man.
or
Oh, I was so sick. I was questioning how many years or how many months or days I had left because I was sick on another level. Luckily, I was able to kind of maintain and do everything I had to do. I didn't miss any work, which is good, arguable. But yeah, I'm back. I'm still a little rough, but I'm a lot better today. I'll spare everybody the gory details of how I'm sick, but I don't think it was a bug. I just think it was Vegas. I think Vegas did that to me. So
Vegas tends to do that. Yeah, it tends to make you either regret yourself or be physically ill by the end.
yeah, normally, like, if you're gonna regret yourself or be sick, it's from doing a copious amount of drugs or, like, fun substances, which wasn't necessarily the case on my end, but, I just think it was, just the environment of Vegas. I think it left an impact on me, but, no, it was a good time. Got to see my buddy, Sean. Shout out to Sean Townley, has his birthday coming up next weekend. So I got to hang out with him and his lady, and it was a good time, man. But I'm glad to be home, glad to be back here. I wanted to bring something to your guys' attention, and Vince, I don't know if you want to pop in on this with your opinion. Oh, there you are. Hey, Vince, producer Vince is
I'm
in the
always
house. Hey.
willing
He
to
was
share my
waiting. He
opinion.
was just waiting to pop in.
Oh,
Well,
dude,
you need
he
an
was like
opinion?
sitting there sweating, and his finger was like getting twitchy, just waiting for the cue to come in. But
Vince, you got a Munster shirt on, dude?
I pulled it out for Eli, dude. It's a
Dude,
little
that's
short.
amazing.
It's a little belly shirt. So this crop is perfect.
Well, see,
Can
Vince.
you, wait, why don't you stand up and show us?
Yeah,
I'm
stand
not-
up. Stand up.
Dude, come on.
We need to hit
stand up.
100 subscribers, and I'll do that.
Wait, hey, we're not far
off.
off. And shout out, thank you for reminding me. Shout out to our new subscribers on YouTube out there. We've had a nice influx of subscribers as of late, boys. So welcome to everybody.
Yeah, thank you
get
guys too much. Thank you guys so much. Who did we have? We had some specific shout outs to give, right?
Yeah, we have a new friend of the show that I've been talking to on TikTok. Sunny Days is the account name. And we've been chopping it up back and forth. We put out a video from one of our cringe stream, which I don't know if you guys remember. I'll try to remind you, summarize a little bit, but it was a video pertaining to a dude that was questioning the mirror universe, and he put a battery charge or a phone charger on his mirror in front of a piece of paper and was like mesmerized by the fact that he could see when he like positioned himself in the camera around, he could see the backside of the paper in the mirrorverse. So we had kind of like we're talking about like how did it work. Vince had a very succinct breakdown, scientific breakdown of how it worked. I was very I'd forgotten about that bit, and then when I went back and I started editing it, I was like, wow, he really put that together nicely.
Yeah, our gut reaction was to just make fun of him because he sounded dumb and had no shirt and had a bowler hat, which I'm not knocking anybody without a shirt and a bowler hat. I think it's a good look personally, but it was nice to also break down the science of all of it and to know, Vince kind of operating as the new Bill Nye the Science Guy kind of.
Yes.
Maybe he could start a new podcast.
Vince
that's
explains
just
it
based
all.
on that.
Dave, you
Well,
were
I
saying
think
we started talking shit, and I thought you meant me. And you're like, he didn't even have a shirt on, and he had a blah, blah, blah. And I was like, I think I was wearing a
It
shirt.
was a belly shirt. It was a Munster's belly shirt.
Girl, I didn't think I had no shirt on.
Well,
but
did I not get the crop right on that?
Also, just really quick closure on that Munster shirt. I bought that for Vince. I saw it at Universal Studios and went, "Oh, Vince would love this shirt." But see, Vince lies about what size to buy him, so he's always like, I'm surprised. I guarantee you, he doesn't wear that shirt out in the mean streets of Beaver.
It's an extra small for me.
They don't allow me to
like,
wear it out
okay.
anymore, dude.
Maybe you can like frame it and turn it into like a cool piece of artwork. But anyway, I just wanted to put some closure on that.
I also got you a shirt, dude, that I was pretty stoked about. That was the Three Amigos, dude.
See, and I have have you go up a size because I know that shit is shrinking first time I wash it, and I want to be able to wear it. I wore that on the last stream, so
100% cotton, dude.
all those, 100%, 100% shrink, dude. But no, I love that shirt. If you're curious what that shirt looks like, go back and watch our last show. I was wearing it during that. But so anyway, Stardays posed a question, and we got into like the nitty gritty of kind of what the mirror universe is, right? And I had forgot that the mirrorverse was a really major topic in Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness. So I wanted to get your opinions. I don't think Stardays is in the chat today. I think they had some stuff going on, but I wanted to first comment. Okay, this was the first comment that we got on this video, and I thought it was an honest question. So the question was in response to this video. Okay, but I don't understand mirrors either. Then confusion. I thought it was a mirror world, and then he put 20-year-old. So I appreciate that you put your age. Stardays, as you can attest, I didn't know what SS meant, so I had to go back and ask you. So I'm pretty sure you can guess my age.
Chance is not 20, so he did not know what SS means.
I bet by my asking you what SS meant, you could probably guess what president was president when I was born. So we'll just leave it there. But yeah, what do you guys think of this? I told them that I would come back and I would pose this question to you guys because it's an interesting question. My response to it was, I just said there are no rules to the mirror world. Anything goes in the mirror world. And then they replied, oh, nah, I don't like that. Rules or we get snatched into the world by mirror clones. That was something I had never considered,
dude,
but
that's fair, dude.
I think it's something to think about. Have you guys ever, do you guys think that there's a threat? We're all worried about extraterrestrials. We all have a mirror in our house. I'm looking at one right now. How do I know that there's not a universe in there with clones waiting to come and snatch me up?
I'm with you. I feel like I'm not as worried about aliens because I feel like they already know we're here and they're just kind of like, these guys are I think we're more of a reality show to them where they're like, let's not mess with them. They're a little messed up, a little strange. Let's just sort of watch as they implode on themselves. Yes. But yeah, as far as the mirrorverse, that's an interesting question that was posed. I don't know. I'm kind of a string theory nerd and I've studied a lot of that. And it's like you start to get into multiverses and you start to get into that there's 10 dimensions. We operate in 3 dimensions, traveling along the 4th dimension, which is time. But we can only go one way on that plane. Then there's all kinds of other stuff going on. And there's seemingly an infinite number of things that could be. And seemingly if you're on a branch of a tree and you make a decision, well, every possible decision you can make branches off into a new branch. And so essentially every moment of time is a new branch, which could go in a almost limitless number of directions. So by that token, almost anything could happen, which is, a little bit terrifying. And, Doctor Strange does go a little bit into that.
Yeah, it absolutely is terrifying. I think the thing to me about the mirror world that Days kind of brought up that I never thought about, I think what I'm worried about is like one morning you're getting ready after you get out of the shower, you're staring in the mirror, doing your morning routine. What if the mirror clones decide that they want to take you into the mirror world and then live out the rest of your life as you? Would anybody, the mirror world has had, for however old I am, 35, there's been 35 years of this mirror clone watching me and studying every aspect of my life. So what chance would I have in putting up any kind of a fight or coming out to rescue myself from the real world, if there is such a thing?
So they could replace you. They're basically an exact replica of you. They could replace you and basically no one would ever know.
No, how would they? And
here's an even greater question. Would it even not be you? Could you argue that just is you and that maybe that's...
I have a greater question. By the way, producer Vince here, 34. I
give it a few months.
ASL Vince.
I know. I was about to say these kids are bringing ASL back and they have no idea.
Yeah.
What if we are the mirror versions of ourselves?
What if we are the mirror versions?
What if we're the mirrors?
Okay, here's what we should launch a preemptive strike against our mirror selves before they can come take us. Maybe we need to go take them and we be the mirror kids. How about that?
I think there needs to be an all-out, like, honestly, if we woke up tomorrow and Joe Biden, they woke Joe Biden up and like knocked him full of whatever they're giving him so he can talk. If he was like, look, we're stopping all of our military budget, we're taking all of our military budget, we're not going to worry about China, we're not worrying about, Iran, we're not worrying about any of these other conflicts.
Russia,
Ukraine, you're on your own. Sorry. We're on to the next thing for the 21st century, which is ourselves. Which honestly, if you think about it, it would help the world out immensely because it would force everybody in a non-egotistical way or neurotic way or what's the word I'm looking for when you're obsessed with yourself? Narcissistic way. It would force us to go, okay, what defenses do I have? Because really, to answer your question, Dave, from before, I think humans, the thing that makes you is your collection of experiences mixed with your collection of memories, right? So I would assume that the mirror world version of yourself wouldn't have the same memories that you had. And I think that would be the only window in and the only chance or only advantage we would have against them. Because then it would become secret invasion style where we don't know who the scrolls are, but we do know slightly through little variations that are slightly off.
it would probably be like 99.4% you.
Yeah.
Most likely.
I
If
agree.
it was like a parallel reality that was like kind of next door, it would be like mostly similar probably. And here's another question. If there was a 50% chance that, no pun intended, that you or your mirrorverse self would die, one of you has to die,
Mhm.
and the only way to not die is to go in and kill your mirror self, would you do it?
Yeah, I'd quit my job tomorrow and start the mission. I don't know what it would look like. I don't know what I would need, the resources, but I have to imagine it would come down to trying to convince other people. I mean, we're all in the bag here. We all understand the mirror world and what we're up against, but converting other people to really create an army of, and I don't know what you'd call it because I want to call it the real world, but I don't know. I'm sure the mirror world is like, we're the real world. That's their mirror world. And
I think
they're not wrong.
I think given the amount of insane things that have been going on the last few years, like I'm pretty sure we're the bizarro mirror world.
Sure.
I was about to say, based off Eli's response, I think he's mirror Eli.
I think so, dude.
Like,
He's evil clone Eli.
Yeah, the real Eli wouldn't want to go and just kill the other one instantly without any questions. The real Eli,
yeah, he didn't even pretend to hesitate.
He's like, oh, I'll quit my job and do it right now. I'm like,
no, I have an answer for that because I know when I went into the mirror world and went to kill my mirror self would try to convince me, like, no. There's a way for us to get over together. And I would hear him out. I wouldn't necessarily be like, no, you're dead. Sorry, this has to be. It's kind of like Dave's short film, Diviner 3000. It's like, well, what really is you? If there's somebody here to take your place, like, what is it about you that makes you you? So I don't know. I feel like if I went into the mirror world, I would be open to listen to what mirror self had to say about
you'd hold a gun to his head, but you would be like, okay, well, I'm gonna hear you out before I pull the trigger.
I would put the gun to his head and go, okay, I'm here and I'm open. Now talk. But I would sit there the whole time and be like, I don't know, I'm not buying it, and then go and act like I was going to shoot. And he's like, no, wait, I'm not done. You didn't let me finish. In my world, there's a Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 4, and I'd be like, okay, well, now we're talking.
Oh.
Who directed it? And then he'd go Taika, and I'd be like, all right, and guns back.
He's like, no, wait, it's old Taika. It's Taika from 10 years ago that was good.
I'm like, okay, what we do in the shadows, Taika? Well, that's different. All right, yeah. So anyway, I thought that was that. I mean, and thanks a lot, Sunny Days, because you really did spark an honest conversation here. And I think we were all better for it. I think we can all come away from this, and I'll cap this conversation off with the line of our interaction between me and Sunny Days, and it was, if I hate myself, he gonna hate me too. That's fucked. If he loves me, we can be roommates. And I think that's true across the board. I think that's true in the mirror world and in our world.
I think the world would be a better place if everybody, listened to that, if everyone abided by that. It's almost like we all live our lives as the protagonists of our own films, really, in a way.
Yeah.
But the truth is that everybody's a protagonist in their own lives. So, the more you can think about others and their perspectives, the better it might be.
Well said. I honestly think we're at the start of world peace here. I think it started with this conversation on TikTok. And I think, I think that's the moral of the story, Sunny Days, is just love yourself and don't worry about your mirror self. They'll come around, or you'll have to climb in the mirror and kill them.
But yeah, that being said, if you have to kill him, be ready for it.
Yeah,
Keep a knife or a gun ready just in case.
yeah,
But hopefully it doesn't come to that.
be ready for the mirror resistance and the mirror upheaval. But I think that's a perfect place to segue into the topic of the day, which is Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. Now, this has been, before we get started, we are going to spoil the hell out of this thing. So if you haven't seen it, you definitely don't want to listen to this right now. Come back, listen. I'm going to say what every other YouTube channel says when they're reviewing movies. Really do yourself the service of not knowing anything about this movie before you go into it. Don't listen to the chatter. Don't listen to the stupid critics that have some political motivation for not liking or not like something. Just go see it yourself and let it wash over you. That being said, Dave, let's start with you. What did you think overall of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3?
Yeah, man, I really loved it. I know we were all a little bit hesitant about this movie. Not about the movie, but just in general. I think of the MCU, at least I was. Of oh man, like please, like no matter what, even though we've had a little bit of some ups and downs with the MCU, like please don't mess up the Guardians. Give us this trilogy. And I think it really delivered, man. I think that and it really seemed like a trilogy. Looking back, I feel like you have Infinity War and Endgame there in the middle of it a little bit, but yeah, this really felt complete. It was very much Rocket's story, like we like we thought it probably was a while back, and just so many characters in the movie. But also, I felt like surprisingly they were all handled really well, juggled really well. Everybody kind of had their moments to shine. I thought Drax was given some really cool moments. Mantis was really great in it. Mantis was able to find a little bit of independence. Tied up Star-Lord's story, but also fully went in with Rocket. Um, and really good service to other characters too, like especially Nebula. Like I really found myself relating to Nebula's character like more than anybody else. And I was like, whoa, that's pretty crazy. Like, if I could tell myself that would happen back in the first Guardians, like I don't know what I would think about that.
Right,
So
right.
yeah, man, really, really great. I was you know, uh I never cry in movies ever, and in fact I've never cried my entire life because I'm so much of a man.
Sure.
But I think if I did and I had a soul and a heart, I would. No, I'm just kidding. No, I did several times and throughout the whole movie. And I think it really like tugs on your heartstrings too with the stuff with Rocket. Obviously it's like always really it's always really gripping when you have animals involved and that kind of cruelty, but really towards the end, like I felt like it was really, powerful, just this sense of like what a movie about like individuality and like, just fighting against the collective and what other people want to how other people want to control your lives. And the Guardians have always had these in D&D terms like they always have like lawful villains, which is perfect because the Guardians are such a ragtag group of like individuals, very you know, very chaotic ragtag group of people that are really strong personalities, and so pitting them again up against someone who wants to essentially dominate the individual is was great. And I know a lot of people were a huge fan of the High Evolutionary, and I was too. I thought it was awesome.
Yeah, well said. I mean, I agree with all of that stuff. Man, I knew that I was gonna love this movie from the opening sequence of the group of raccoons that are in that cage, and you see the hand reaching towards them, and all of them run to the back, but Rocket is the one that moves forward towards the hand. I was just like, man, what a beautiful way of saying so much without having to say anything at all. And one thing that struck me about this movie is it was the one movie that I was aware the entire time that the movie that we were watching not only was a completion of the trilogy, made the whole trilogy its own thing, but also that it was a special movie, that it was something that you don't get from cinema very often. You don't really get it from Marvel movies anymore in a way that you used to. You haven't gotten it since Endgame, where James Gunn did such a masterful job of taking this world, taking these characters who have changed from the last been 6 years since the last movie, and two Avengers movies and a Love and Thunder in between that affected the Guardians. Not so much Love and Thunder because they didn't do anything with the Guardians at all, but not only that, but also the Christmas special. It solidified the Christmas special for me in areas that I felt like were loose ends of the Christmas special, character choices or character developments that didn't make sense. Like for Quill, I thought, his character kind of in the Christmas special was a little bit weak, or not weak, but just unfounded. And this one, it gave so much more context to that and made me enjoy it so much more. But man, and this is going to sound so lame to say, and I don't really care, but like James Gunn's whole heart was just on display. I felt like in this movie, and he took the 6 years and let that inform the story. He took what happened in Endgame and Infinity War, and while not directly making it about that, really capitalized and showed the characters where they were at in effect of all that stuff, or in reaction to all that stuff and where they were now. So I absolutely loved it. I loved Chris Pratt's performance in this movie. I mean, they were all stand up. One of the reviews I read said, they all showed up, and that's 100% true. But Chris Pratt, there were so many levels to his character that were seen in the first two movies, and just the despair at the beginning of that movie. When he's drunk and all of them are reacting, and Drax goes again, or says something along the lines of, did it happen again? And I don't know, it just hit me in this place of emotion, and it was such a roller coaster ride. I've never seen such dark imagery in a movie in terms of animal abuse, and it like above and beyond anything that I could have imagined that a Marvel movie would be, or that Disney would allow for. But I'm so glad that they did. I'm so glad that they left that dude alone within reason and let him make the movie. I can't believe that they even considered for a time using a different director for that guy to close out this trilogy. I honestly, I love this movie. There was not a sequence or a scene that I didn't like, that I felt like fell flat. Everything informed the overall story. I see a lot of people complaining about Adam Warlock. I loved Adam Warlock. I thought that was so cool. And I've seen interviews with James Gunn where he's talking about how the kind of what he wanted to do with Adam Warlock had to change from the last movie. But man, I just love his character. I love the way he played it. I loved, how it was threaded throughout, and just there was so many things that you didn't see coming. Like if you would have told me there was going to be a sequence in this movie about a sentient raccoon and a sentient otter having a conversation in heaven, I would have been like, get the hell out of here. No way. But it's just so impactful, and he just makes you fall in love with these characters again and again and again. And on one hand, I'm really bummed that this guy isn't going to make any more Guardian specific movies. But on the other hand, I'm so grateful that we have this trilogy. And in my opinion, it is up there with all of the classic cinema trilogies, or at least is in the conversation.
I liked it. Yeah, I liked that it was like, I like some of the like, James Gunn always writes these like sort of like random conversations that don't usually for comedy's sake, that are like, don't really have to do with anything, but are like sometimes funny, and like, sometimes in the past he's been hit or miss with that, but like I really enjoyed kind of everything that he did with those conversations this time. And one of them I remember that was funny was like it was like the humans getting old conversation that was like, yeah, well, humans live till they're like, pretty much live until they're 50, and then like Mantis is like, what's the point of even living? And he's like, she's like, are you almost dead? He's like, I'm not 50. It's funny because like Chris Pratt is like 45. He's like approaching like 50, but it's funny. Like you mentioned, I guess side note, like you mentioned Love and Thunder and like with the Guardians. I forgot Guardians were even in that because I feel like they were wasted so much and there was no point of them being in there. It's funny, like even the theater that I go to, Alamo Draft House in LA, that's like a super awesome theater, but they always do like recaps of everything before, like everything leading up. They did a recap of every single character and their development, like while you're sort of waiting for the movie.
Oh, that's cool.
And it's like really well done, but like it's funny they didn't mention anything that happened in Love and Thunder like at all whatsoever for any of the characters. So I'm like, yeah, that kind of checks out.
Yeah, there's nothing really to add from Love and Thunder. It was just, I don't, other than it was, I guess finishing off a storyline that was kind of left open at the end of Endgame. But yeah, I mean, there's not much to say there. But yeah, we got to talk about the Mantis fight. That sequence when they're on, I don't remember the name of it, but that organic planet, which at first I was like, this is weird. And then as it went on, the interaction with Nathan Fillion, I thought was just so funny. And but that fight scene where she's using her empath abilities in a way to fight it,
Jumping
or
from person to person, like,
yeah,
yeah, that was
but
super
the
cool.
way she changed people's perspectives on things to produce the outcome that she wanted in the fight. And the guy that she has dance, man, when he cuts to that wide shot and you just see this guy dancing in the middle of this massive battle, I don't think I've laughed harder in a Marvel movie, and that's saying something because there are a lot of Marvel movies that are pretty damn funny.
That's the great thing about what James Gunn has been able to do throughout all this whole trilogy is like do really ridiculous things, but like justify it so that it's
Yeah,
grounded. And he 100% did. It's almost like
100%.
in the first Guardians, like the dance off, like he justified there being a dance off for the end battle of Chris Pratt because it was a distraction. Like it made sense. And similarly, like, yeah, Mantis almost uses her like pacifist powers because they're sort of like non-lethal powers and just making people,
Yeah.
completely controlling their brains.
But yeah, another thing, you called it out already, but I freaking loved Drax so much in this movie. Dave Bautista's performance, dude, is so he upped it. I mean, like I said, all of them across the board up their performances, and they've been great in every movie. But this one, just his connection to children and him wanting to be a dad, and you forget about Drax's backstory, especially in the comics, where he's the one to kill Thanos, and Thanos wiped out his family, and you forget about the tragedy of these characters, with the exception of Rocket, that you're painfully aware of the tragedy that is Rocket. But man, Drax just at the end when he starts dancing, dude, I freaking loved it. I'm gonna watch that when that comes out on VOD, man. I'm watching that sequence so
And it's
many
a tie
times.
and it's a tie back to, the second one
Yeah,
where, he was like, your people that dance are pathetic,
yeah,
like,
yeah,
and yeah, Drax, yeah, I really like Drax. I mean, especially considering that like there's so many people that have loved Drax since the first Guardians and really related to Drax, like particularly like younger kids. And I know like a lot of autistic people like really like saw themselves being seen like with felt seen watching Drax because he's so much more literal than everybody else, and like their brains are different. It's like when you see everything more literal, like you don't, you know, but also being such a like loving dude, like really like there's this huge Drax fan club out there, and I feel like this movie like really embraced that, and like he was the window where like that could the only one that could speak to all these kids, and like him really like having that whole conversation with Nebula, like I thought was really cool. Nebula like stepping into this way more like commander type
yes,
role, like really like kind of the only voice of like organization within the Guardians now.
dude, the
Like,
sheriff of nowhere. That was amazing.
oh, is that what? I don't know if I caught that.
Yeah,
They
so
called her that.
she was
Oh, by the end, right?
well, I think at the beginning too, like that was one element that I loved that they had kind of touched on in the Christmas special was that they bought Nowhere and that was their headquarters for the Guardians of the Galaxy. I was like,
Yeah.
dude, that's so cool. But to kind of see it play out, to see that opening sequence with Rocket where they've wired or they've hooked up Nowhere to have a PA system that plays music.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I just thought that was so freaking cool, man. And it was something that I didn't really see. And I know again that a lot of that was kind of touched on in the Christmas special, but they were able to kind of expand on it in a way that made sense. But yeah, and her thing at the end where, she was like, I'm gonna run Nowhere, and Drax, I need your help in creating a society or a community that like we all needed. I just
Yeah, Drax being being a like actually a lover character because like
yeah,
archetypally in storytelling, like he really, even though he's like a fierce warrior, like he actually is a lover, like when you think about it. So him embracing that was really cool. I also thought it was cool seeing like past Gamora, basically, right?
dude.
Because it's Gamora, but it's not Gamora. And I was a little worried about that because it was like, well, okay, are they gonna basically like go back on Gamora dying in a way and be like, okay, this is the new Gamora. Now they're like together again. And he 100% didn't do that. It was like, no, like, you know, Peter, Quill was trying to kind of force that the whole movie, and
Yeah.
was like, no, it's not happening. And then he has to face the facts at the end that like, no, it's not going to happen. And Gamora completely goes her own way, goes back to the Ravagers. And that line where she's like, I bet what we had was, what did she say?
Fun.
Like,
She said, I bet we were fun.
I bet we were fun. And he's like, you have no idea. And it's like him letting go of the fact that like, okay, like Gamora truly is dead. Like I'm not, I can't have that. But like, man, looking back on it, it is special. But yeah, it was cool seeing Gamora, because in the first Guardians, I feel like we didn't quite get that. Like we got that a little with Gamora, where she was a little more, coming, Thanos assassin. But this is seeing her really like even more ruthless than that.
She was
And
way
so I
more
really
the
liked
deadliest
seeing
woman
that.
in the galaxy, which is what she is in the
Yeah.
comics. So it was
Yeah.
awesome to see that. I freaking and I'm gonna say
Nebula's like she's always been. Sorry.
yeah.
Nebula's like, oh, she's always been like this.
Yeah, I'm gonna say this probably about every character, but as you kind of bring them up, I freaking love what they did with Gamora. The whole like when the Ravagers first showed up, I bumped into a little bit because I was like, okay, we're fitting in cameos from all these characters in the last one. But man, it was so cool. But then when Gamora came in, I was like, oh shoot, that's cool. Like I didn't see that coming. But the way that she played it was so awesome, and it was so like she had never played that character before. So shout out to Zoe Saldana, man. That was so cool. And just the edge she had, and the loose cannon aspect of her character, which we saw a little bit of in the first one, but she really played up. And again, that that was kind of something James Gunn said that the Russo brothers I guess James Gunn said that the original idea was to kill Gamora off in the second one, because he said that Zoe Saldana came to him after the first one and said, I don't really want to play this character that long. So he goes, okay, cool, I'll respect that. And he goes, but it just didn't feel right. And he goes, Kevin Feige was the one who was like, it doesn't feel right that Gamora is the one dying in this one. So that they transitioned it to Yondu. And he said, once they did that, everything fell into place, which makes sense. That whole movie is about that relationship with Yondu and that payoff at the end of Yondu's death. And
it's about Peter
the colors
and
of a gourd, and all of that stuff. Dude, Kraglin's reaction at the end of number 2 was one of my favorite scenes, where he's just sitting there in his despair cheering because they flashed the colors of a gourd. I love that, and the way she played it was dope, and I can't wait to watch her performance again.
Because really, yeah, I mean, I'm a huge fan of the second one, and and what is it's about, which is fatherhood, really, and like what it means to be family, what it means to be a father,
And who is a father? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, just going through more characters, obviously Rocket was like awesome, and like it was kind of weird in a way where like the whole second act where like Rocket basically like wasn't in the film for most of it, except through the flashbacks, which totally worked, which was great. And in the end, like I loved that he like embraced being a raccoon after having like 5 films of him being like, stop calling me raccoon, like I don't know what that is. Like now he's like, oh shit, no, I'm proud to be a raccoon because this is where I came from. I came from this like shitty little cage with like 8 random baby raccoons, and I'm proud of that.
Yeah, that was beautiful. I mean, that was masterful in the way that it threaded that story. And there's so much, going back to the talk about this being in a trilogy. The other cool thing was that it was informed by the other, movies outside of the Guardians universe and the greater Marvel universe. But man, he did such a masterful job of tying it all together and making it feel you don't ever have to watch. I mean, you might have to watch Endgame and Infinity War to fully get the context of the Gamora and Star-Lord storyline, but not really. Like you kind of get it from, the way that they set it up and the way that it's played out, and who Star-Lord is at the beginning of this movie, who's a broken man. I can't believe that we got the movie that we got on so many levels.
Yeah. I was watching it with my wife, and she was saying that like it's the movie, like a movie that's truly about hope, which I thought was really interesting. Like there's a lot of movies that sort of like pretend to be about hope, but like I don't know, this movie just seemed like, and like interestingly, like nobody really died by the end, which is like not what I was expecting. I was expecting like potentially multiple deaths of the Guardians, to have it really be like bittersweet, and nobody really did, and I feel like that was actually a good call.
But there was 3 instances where I was sure 3 of them were dead. The scene with Star-Lord when he was out in space, I was like, oh, he's dead. How do you come back from that?
Yeah.
And, Drax getting shot by Nathan Fillion. I was like, man, he's dead. And then there was one.
Oh yeah, he got wrecked.
There was one more that I thought, I was like, oh man, I can't believe they killed him off. And they did. You know, it was so dark. The stuff with Rocket was so intense. Like going back to what you said, the flashbacks, that's how you do flashback sequences to inform the overall story and not take away from what's going on in the present. So awesome. But it was so aggressively, he's making you feel in this movie, and rightfully so. By the end of it, when you get to the end of this movie, it all pays off. But I was starting to feel as and when I was like, this is so aggressively sad and tragic. It would surprise me if anybody did die. But with that said, I really thought Drax was dead, and I really thought Star-Lord. There was one more that I can't remember off the top of my head, but I was convinced that they were dead. So man, that was just such a good job. It was.
But I did think, I did think that it worked really well, because even, it wasn't just like they were miraculously saved and whatever. It was like, the fact that, like you said, Adam Warlock, that ended up being able to save Star-Lord, like, it's for a reason. It's because, like, the Guardians chose to not be dicks to Adam Warlock, that, he had this like change of heart and everything. And
hey Dave, really quick, your camera is super shaky, just letting you know.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, dude, when Adam Warlock comes into freaking Heart, going crazy on you, that song, when you just see him fly in and then he takes Rocket the frick out, dude. Oh, I thought that was so cool and unexpected. It starts off with a bang and doesn't let up.
What you were saying about Nathan Fillion, going back to that whole sequence, like, I thought that was kind of funny and weird, like having this whole planet that was like made of skin and muscle and whatever it was, like, and it was kind of funny, like me being like a D&D player too, like that sequence like felt very D&D, like almost more than a D&D movie, to be honest, of like them, because the characters were all so specifically like certain classes. Like Star-Lord was so barred during that, that, like, he was trying to use his charisma to like do all these things, and like, it was almost like they failed their checks, like when he's like, oh, don't worry, like, I'll handle this, like she's gonna dig me, and like tries to do it, and then like Gamora comes out and it's like, no, this is taking too long, like puts the gun to her head, and then it was almost like Mantis and Drax like failed their stealth checks, and
then the turn
instantly found out by everybody. They're like, they're right there.
Yeah. And then the turn of that scene where Star-Lord, where she's like, she helps Star-Lord, and he's like, no, I was just using your emotions to get what I wanted, basically. That was so
he ends
cool.
up doing it. Yeah, he ends up succeeding. He's like, I told you she dug me.
I told you she dug me. Yeah. That was so good.
Yeah, that was cool. Yeah, man. It's crazy to me still. Like, I know we've said this before, that like I'm not a fan of a lot of James Gunn movies, and like I struggled to even get through his Suicide Squad. Like, I know people have a lot of different opinions on that, but it's crazy to me that like he can make, both sorts of movies, and the fact that that's the same guy that could do that, and then it's the same guy that has made these Guardians movies, and they've all three been so solid and awesome, is like pretty amazing to me.
Well, I think personally, for as much as we talk about Kevin Feige kind of losing his touch, I think that has a lot to do with Kevin Feige. I've watched a lot of interviews this week with James Gunn, and he talked about kind of the process. He said that Kevin Feige doesn't, with the F-bomb. He said that, he goes, I put it in there. He goes, but I was bummed because Disney or Kevin Feige has never stepped on anything and made me take something out. And he goes, I knew when I put that F-bomb in that they were going to make me take it out. So he goes, I was talking to Kevin. He goes, well, what about the F-bomb? Are you going to make me take it out? He goes, well, the Russo brothers put an F-bomb in Endgame and ultimately decided to take it out because they didn't want that to be their legacy. So he tells James Gunn, he goes, if you're okay with that being your legacy, you can keep it in. And James Gunn goes, dude, if you're trying to mind
100%.
me, he goes, if you're trying to mind trick me into like not doing it, he goes, you're only convincing me to do it. And he said Kevin Feige started laughing. So that's that kind of like, and that reminds me of the great freaking Phil Jackson, who is the Lakers and Bulls coach during their most amazing runs, who Phil Jackson wouldn't tell you suck to your face. Phil Jackson would play these roundabout head games with you. He wouldn't tell you anything. He would just bench you for an inordinate amount of time and let that communicate to you your performance, right? Which is such a like respectful thing to do in a way, because it's like, I'm not going to treat you like you're a baby. I'm going to give you the integrity of as a grown man to make the decision you want, which is kind of unheard of in film. These studios get scared, especially now. These studios get afraid of so many things, and they end up the last few Marvel movies have ended up just cutting and reshooting to making kind of a soulless endeavor, that this was anything but that. This was the opposite of that.
You can see like, sometimes it's hard to know exactly what scenes were reshoots, but I think often the scenes that you end up realizing were reshoots in these movies like end up like, I think every one that we've noticed in the MCU has been for the worse. Like,
Yeah.
like Multiverse of Madness comes to mind, where it's like forcing something in there that's like should not be in there. Like, what else? I think some of the stuff in Age of Ultron that was kind of like redone, and like they thought audience didn't like it or whatever because it was like too weird and dark, like probably should not have like been reshoots. But yeah, it's interesting. I think for the most part, Marvel has been just so good at that. And I think that's the magic of why they have had so much success, and they come out of nowhere as this indie studio back in 2008. Is one dude, and that's Kevin Feige, and I think that he believes in people. He hires people for a reason. He hires them to be like, "Hey, we're hiring you for a reason." And oftentimes, either the director or someone they're casting isn't even, they're people that aren't big at all. They're people that are like, they are putting faith in because they're like, "Hey, we're gonna roll the dice on you." Like, the Chris Hemsworths, Chris Evans of the world, like, Chris Pratt is a huge one. Like, I think they were talking about like when they first cast, somebody had the idea of like having Chris Pratt try out for it, and they're like, the fat guy from Parks and Rec.
Yeah, right.
You know what I mean? It's like, and like look at him now. Like now, he's one of the hottest commodities in Hollywood, and
most beloved and also hated, but that's every celebrity and everything. But I think it's more people that love him, and I think it's kind of cool to see him branch out. That's the other thing that I really dug. I love, dude, it truly end credit sequence where he's talking to his grandpa, and James Gunn does this thing of he ends the scene early, but he lets the audio play out past.
Yeah.
I just love stuff like that because it's so like, James Gunn is like, I'm trying to make myself laugh. And if you find it funny, cool. But if you don't, this is in here because it probably makes him laugh and it probably makes Pratt laugh. And
his Cheerios. Yeah.
Yeah. And he just like, he's well, now I got to know about the guy next door, that whole dialogue.
Yeah. And it was funny, but it was also so great because it really made him like, we just see this like super mundane human, but very human moment. Yeah. In a movie that is a sci-fi movie where we're out in space and wacky crap is happening. We're going to end it by Star-Lord's character being like, I've been running my whole life. Now I need to go back home and I need to like, find myself again and deal with some things that I've never dealt with. Well, now he's in the most mundane, like very human moment that any of us might find themselves in, where they're just eating Cheerios, hearing the gossip of the, our little suburban street that we're on. I thought it was pretty awesome.
And then the final sequence is just, the amazing or incredible Star-Lord. I don't remember the actual wording of it, but
I think it was legendary, maybe.
Yeah, the legendary Star-Lord will return. I thought that was cool. I would love to see, and they're not going to do it because Pratt requires too much money, but I would love to see a Disney Plus series, like a 6-part miniseries of just Pratt traversing modern day America in the Midwest with his 90-year-old grandfather. I think that'd be hilarious, and I think Pratt has the chops to pull that off.
Yeah, that's awesome. So yeah, just looking at the Rotten Tomatoes scores, it ended up getting 82% on Tomato Meter, which is pretty good. I feel like it maybe should have been higher than that.
Yeah, I agree.
I thought it was awesome. Like every bit as good as I mean, it's hard to say. Like the first one was so good, maybe it's hard to compare with that, but I thought it was great. But if you look at the audience score, 95% is like beyond great. So you can tell how beloved it was.
I know the narrative of this movie is how much it didn't make. That's what people love to now. All of these armchair stat line guys are all concerned about what Marvel or Disney makes at the box office, as if they haven't figured it out. But I know that they came in under the previous 2 movies, but I think this movie is going to have word of mouth. And I think, I do wonder how this does with families, just because of the element of the, the animal abuse. It is hardcore. And the imagery is scary too. Like that bunny, dude, I haven't stopped thinking about that bunny floor since I saw it. But
borderline like horrifying because it was horrifying, but like to see the like naivety of like that, especially that character, was like extremely sad. To be like, whoa, like That's and have this, they just think that living in this cage is like normalcy,
Yeah.
which is like, terrifying because it's almost like that could happen to any of us and we would never know,
Yeah.
like beings just adapt to things.
Let's go
Yeah,
back
but
to what you said earlier about let's talk about the high evolutionary and where he ranks in terms of, Marvel villains. For me, I think number one Marvel villain is Thanos, just because, he impacted so much of the Marvel universe for so long and culminated in this epic battle and literally, snapped half the half of existence away. But I think High Evolutionary comes in second. I can't think of, other than Zemo, I can't think of another villain that really, was as impactful or as a villain that you hate with every fiber in your being and you just want to die in the worst way possible in the end.
yeah, this actor, I didn't really know of him. Chukwudi Owuji. I don't know. I'm probably butchering his
No, I think
name.
that's right.
I don't know if I've seen him in anything before, but he was awesome. Like, and I know like there's a lot of people that were a huge fan of his, and like, just like a lot of people feel like we haven't really gotten like a great MCU villain in a while, and like he really, kind of hit the nail on the head and kind of gave it his all. And somebody said something which was really interesting that I saw, which was like, what makes him a villain is different than any MCU villain because what makes him a villain comes from uh uh self what's the word, like the opposite of pride, like uh like
Self-loathing,
yeah, basically self-loathing and loathing and uh yeah, I mean that's something that like
inferiority complex to
yeah,
Rocket.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Because he's like extremely calm when you first see him, and then he has these huge emotional outbursts because he realizes that like he's being shown up by a raccoon, and like and that's he pretends like he's this like he has this like these great ideals, but yeah, in truth, he's really just this highly emotional dude that it comes from him like not being having an inferiority complex, which is like pretty interesting,
Well, he did he's basically a groomer, right? He's grooming all of these animals to be higher intelligence, but he makes Rocket in
Damn,
that
that's true.
in a couple of those. Dude, there's a lot of crossover from what if I didn't know better, and I'm sure this was long in production before, Love and Thunder and all that, but there are things in this movie that Love and Thunder tried to do that this movie just completely murked. And that's one of them, like the sequences with the kids in the cages and freeing the kids. And there's a lot of crossover there, but he
It
makes
was
Rocket.
interesting how there were some similar
Yeah.
like things to Love and Thunder, but I just thought that like they were executed just so much better.
Yeah, so he, the interesting thing I thought was he makes Rocket feel like an equal. He makes all of them feel like an equal, that they're going to be delivered to this promised land. There's also, you know, if I'm going to go so far, there's also a lot of theology in this movie. There's a blatant scene with Adam Warlock and Star-Lord when he saves them from infinite space, and there's that, the thing where he touches his finger, like in that famous, I don't know the artist who did it, but that art piece of God touching the hand of humans. There's a lot of
Yeah.
theological stuff in this movie, just in terms of redemption and second chances and not giving up on people and hope. I think Nevada was correct. This movie is dark on its face, but it's really a story of hope. And I thought the High Evolutionary was a perfect example of that. That actor's great. I think he worked with James Gunn on that Peacemaker show, and I think James Gunn was so impressed with him, as from interviews that I've watched from James Gunn. I'm not taking this from a conversation I had with him, but he said that he was so impressed. He's one of the best actors he's ever worked with, and he knew when he was working with
Oh
him that
wow.
he wanted
Yeah.
him to be. So yeah, he was great. I mean, there's so many performances and there's so many directing choices that you watch the movie and you're like, wow, it washes over you. It's great, but there's so many specific directing choices that are James Gunn that absolutely elevated this movie. And yeah.
Yeah. I was just gonna say, yeah, he's almost like he has this you hear about like the savior complex
Mhm.
of like that kind of is what he is, where he's like, oh well, I'm gonna be great and very kind to you as long as like you think that I'm your god.
Yeah.
But as soon as you question my ego in any way, then I'm gonna destroy you.
Yeah.
I thought was really great. I enjoyed that concept. I'm looking now at kind of like the top ranked Marvel villains, and I've written articles about this before and stuff like that. But you know, the MCU is constantly evolving. Yeah, I agree. Like, I think, you know, Thanos is definitely towards the top there. I think some other standouts we have, you know, Killmonger.
Ooh.
I mean, potentially Agatha Harkness. This person has, and I kind of agree with that. It's pretty awesome. Vulture, I think, is up there. But yeah, I mean, I thought High Evolutionary was pretty awesome. Like, as soon as I heard it was High Evolutionary, I was super stoked. Because it's a super because he's a super lesser known villain, like, in the comics, but like that concept is just so cool that, like, you know who calls themselves High Evolutionary is like,
Right.
you are literally playing God by
Yeah.
evolving. Like,
It's baked into the title.
I was gonna say I was waiting for a Ninja Turtle joke when he evolved the little turtle when you put him in the capsule. He turned into basically a
Oh, that was horrifying too.
essentially a mutant turtle. But yeah, it was so horrifying. It was like,
so
oh my
horrifying.
God. And
It was
then,
almost like a Cronenberg, David Cronenberg, The Fly type, you know,
oh yeah,
inspiration of body horror, you know.
yeah.
That's interesting. In the thing that, you know, the tough part about that villains list is they're all great villains for different reasons. You know, some of them are redeemable, like in the case of Killmonger, you know, he was more of a redeemable character. You know, Thanos thought that he was doing something to benefit human or existence and the galaxy and the universe. But High Evolutionary, I mean, and to just to see it, to the links, to the extent of where James Gunn took us with imagery has never been done before in a superhero movie. So that alone, I think, just endears the audience to really hating a character, and you know, and that half of that is the performance too. You can't hate somebody unless they portray a character that you hate.
Well, but I think too the best villains are the ones where, like, in a way you can see how they have a point. Like, in a way that you agree with them. You're like, oh, like, oh, they're kind of true. They're still evil, but, like, you know what I mean. It makes them multi-dimensional, which, like,
I
you know,
agree. I just
and
think that like the MCU is rife with those kind of villains. Like I feel like that is kind of like that's the thing of, you know, like that's why I didn't like Black Adam. It's like obviously it's a different movie and he's not a villain, but they tried to portray it as like, oh, he doesn't give a shit. He'll break a neck. He, you know, like, and he's but he at the end of the day, you know, he's just doing it because he's trying to redeem his father and stuff like that. And I think that does work
yeah,
when it's done in the hands of the right, you know, in the hand, because again, I think Thanos is that. I think Thanos is a character that you go, okay, and you know, there's so many there's been so many places I've seen stickers that just say Thanos was right. And it's so funny because it always makes you sit there and go like, well, maybe, you know, to a certain perspective, maybe he was.
yeah.
And
I
a lot
think
of times
Killmonger, Vulture, yeah, are also kind of
yeah.
like, you could see where they're coming from at least. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. I thought that was good. Hey, hey, producer Vince, you still around, or you did you crawl into a bottle? Oh, there he is.
Hey, no,
He's back.
I was just listening to you guys and being like, yeah, I agree.
Yeah, so
You guys covered all
were
my
there
points.
is there anything we're missing in terms of like highlights of stuff that you liked from the movie?
I saw something in the movie that I thought was questionable, and I wanted to see what you guys thought. What'd you guys think of Groot finally speaking for a moment?
I think that was James Gunn letting us in, like we can us as the audience.
Yeah, dude, I took that too. I was gonna see if anybody else took it like that, because
yeah,
I was in the middle of the movie, really, like, in my mind, started to think about the I am Groot concept, and I'm like, how, like, you know, I think I started thinking about it when Gamora couldn't understand him, and I was like, wait a second. I think these beings, I think you can just understand him when you have an emotional connection to him.
I like that answer, and now I like that scene way better because I was in the theater like,
so yeah,
that,
it makes sense
or
that,
frick
like,
that.
it's like, oh wait, at the end, like, we can now understand him. It's
we are Groot.
Kind of crazy.
Man,
yeah,
dude.
Yeah, and what a
I'm back.
genius thing. Again, that goes back to what I was saying about, you know, and it's lame to hear myself say it, but James Gunn, it seems like a very sensitive artist type person, and like his heart was on full display in this movie of what not only he thinks and how he sees the world, but also how much he loves these people and these characters and the audience, and everything about it just seemed, you know, so many movies nowadays, it feels like creators almost resent the audience, and I understand that on a certain degree, because in a lot of times with these big budget movies, Star Wars, Marvel, all these comic book movies, you are beholden to an audience because you're stepping into something that people already have expectations for. But it just, in this one, it oozed how much he loved doing this. I think how grateful he was to be back because, as we all remember, there was a short period where they pulled it from him. And, he even said, he goes, there was a time when they offered it back that I didn't think I was going to do it. He goes, but I just had to finish Rocket's story. I think Rocket is his tie to this greater world. So yeah, that was a great note though. I forgot about that.
Should we have gotten this movie 2 years earlier? Yes, but here we are, and it was still great. So we're still waiting.
And yeah, I definitely think that the wait almost made it better because it circumvented, we're now in a minefield of shit when it comes to movies. And I think movies like these that are, I think even Wakanda Forever, I'm kind of shocked to see how many people have bad things to say about Wakanda Forever. But I think these movies are on another level. They transcend the genre, they transcend the MCU label while also informing it, which is like such a skill and an art form. And I think what makes people really love Marvel movies, it's like Tony Stark had some intersection with the greater Marvel universe, but they were Tony Stark stories. And I hope to God, and for the future of the MCU movies, that they get back to this kind of storytelling, keep it self-contained, go out into the greater MCU when it's needed, or when you're doing bigger movies that are team up movies or whatever. But I think, I don't know. We'll see where it goes from here. But I don't have enough good things to say about this movie. I can't wait to watch it. I can't wait to watch it in the sense of a trilogy. So, which brings me to my next question. Where does this rank amongst the great cinematic, big budget, little budget, comic book movie, sci-fi, fantasy? Where does this rank in the pantheon of trilogies?
Yeah,
I think it's top 5
of MCU.
I mean, across the board.
Just
I mean,
like
across movies.
like Back to the Future.
Back to the Future.
5. Yeah. I mean, it's hard for me to put Back to the Future in there as much as I love it, because the second and third ones are just not quite as.
Oh, number 2 is fantastic, Dave.
But that's what I mean. But what you're speaking to is what I'm talking about. It's like there's heralded trilogies but this one doesn't have a weak point. There's not one movie. I would say the original Star Wars is in that discussion. To me, the original Star Wars
for sure
is
100%.
Indy. I want to put in that discussion. I love Indy. Indy is one of my favorite film franchises of all time. But I don't love Temple of Doom. I don't think Temple of Doom.
Dude, how could you not love Temple of Doom, dude?
I just think it's half a movie. I don't think it's like, if you look at and that's my point of all this is like, there are great trilogies. I'll watch Temple of Doom all day, and I enjoy Temple of Doom. I just think when you look at Last Crusade, and when you look at Raiders of the Lost Ark, those movies are just like, they're incredible, and there's not a weak point in that movie. To me, Temple of Doom just has patches of it that don't work necessarily as well as the other two.
Name one.
I love Temple of Doom because it's at the same time the silliest and also the darkest.
Dude, I think that's my favorite one.
Dude, I think it is for me too, and I'm kind of ashamed to admit it, but
not at all, dude. Like call him up.
Okay, well, this stream just turned into something else entirely now.
Well, okay, going back to this. Okay, so we got the obvious ones, right? Okay, we talked about Indie, original Star Wars. We got Lord of the Rings, obviously. You mentioned Back to the Future. We could consider the Toy Story trilogy, although it's not a trilogy anymore. But the first 3 are basically the trilogy.
Well, Star Wars isn't a trilogy anymore. I think we can be selective about what movies we want to be included.
Yeah, although the originals definitely counts as a trilogy, I would say. Obviously,
I'm just saying, like, we don't have to count the sequels where we don't want to, because I agree. I think Toy Story is in that conversation, just in terms of pure storytelling.
I think as long as it's like a complete story on its own of 3, it should count. I'm looking at this other list too. There's like the Godfather trilogy, which is also like
Godfather 3 blows.
I don't think it's as bad as people make it out to be, but it's obviously
What about the Ninja Turtles too?
Dude, Ninja Turtles would be in it if it wasn't for Turtles 3.
Dude, I love the live action Ninja Turtles, but the third one is so bad. I can't.
Someone out there must love Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3. I don't know a single soul, but there has to be one. It's like in the list.
It's like ruins the sanctity of the first 2. Like,
but same can be said for Back to the Future 3. I feel like those are like.
I mean, that's why I mentioned it.
Yeah.
Although, yeah.
You gotta have a bad one.
I'm looking at some of these other ones. There's the Matrix trilogy. I don't know. What else? We got Aliens, Alien 3.
Alien 3. I feel like most of these movies, the third one has destroyed it.
That's my whole point.
That's been the thing. I mean, with the original Spider-Man trilogy, that's been the thing too. Like, you were doing pretty well before the third one.
And Iron Man.
Yeah. I mean, the second one had its issues. I also love a lot about that movie. Yeah, obviously, let's not even talk about Iron Man.
Well, can we?
Well,
create
there's
a
also
category?
the Captain America trilogy, which I love and is super good. But I don't know that you can look at it the same way.
I kind of feel like the two, like, it's so. I think the four Russo brother directed MCU movies are 100% the top four for me. But yeah, I don't know if it works quite as well as like an actual trilogy where, like, you know, maybe like 90%, but like, you know, okay, there's also Pirates, which I would like 100%.
Yeah.
I'm a massive Pirates fan, dude. Of like, I'll put the first three like as their own trilogy.
Agreed.
100%.
What about the Hobbits?
I'm out, dude.
That's 1 and 2 again, dude. I don't think I ever
1.5 good movies, dude.
I don't think I ever finished the third movie. I tried.
Third one's unwatchable. Third one is unwatchable.
It really is,
which is
dude.
so
It's
sad.
Like, it's like, where are we now? What are we? What's happening? Who's this
also,
person?
why break it up into 3? It would have been a perfect dose.
Oh, because New Line wanted $1 billion, $3 billion, as opposed to 1.5 or 1. Makes sense. I mean, that makes sense. I don't decry them for that. Just if you can't tell the story, then that's what's going to happen.
And that's
what
it felt like.
If you have to force it into being a trilogy, that's going to happen, dude.
Yeah.
Hunger Games was like the similar thing where like they broke it into 4, right? Instead of 3. And like the last 2, I'm like, what's happening? There's nothing happening. Like,
yeah,
why
I
is
feel like
this
even
not
Harry
just one
Potter
movie?
kind of did
This is
that
like,
at some point.
What's that?
I feel like Harry Potter did that at some point too, where they're like, "Oh, this is part 1," and you're like, "Come on, just finish
the last
the
one was
fucking
broken
story."
I mean, I
dude.
somewhat I understand it
It was a
if
longer
if the source material calls for it, and that last Harry Potter book is fat, so there's a lot to draw from and a lot to do within a 2-hour story. But Hobbit is one book, and it's not even very long, so it's like,
Yeah, I recently listened to it, and it was fantastic,
dude. The Desolation of Smaug is a really good movie. I really enjoyed that one. I remember seeing that one with you, Vince, and we were like, the next one's gonna be epic, and then the next one came, and like, yeah, it was just
the next one came, and then I wasn't aware that it was gonna be part 1 or whatever, or that another movie was coming out. So I was fucking pissed because I was like 2 hours in, and I was like, wait, this movie doesn't seem like it's gonna be ending.
Yeah,
how are they gonna end this?
Yeah.
Why are they prolonging?
Well,
this?
yeah, I mean, okay, so going back to, I mean, like, in going back to the MCU, you know, I think the best trilogies we're looking at are obviously Cap, which is like, you know, those Cap movies are so high esteem for me, like, especially like Winter Soldier and Civil War, like, are my favorites. And then we have, you know, you can look at Spider-Man also, which is like, you know, I think definitely that sees itself, that was so ingrained in the MCU that's like, you know, it's a little hard to not take. Cap is kind of like that too, where it's also like you kind of also have to watch, you know, for Spider-Man you have to watch Civil War to kind of get it. For Cap, you definitely have to include like Winter Soldier, Endgame, and Infinity War in there.
Civil War is
more huge overarching thing,
but it's more of an Avengers movie than it is a Cap centric movie.
I would argue that it's 100% both, but yeah, I can see that where like there's just so many characters in it where like. Yeah, it is almost like a hard to see it as like 100% a trilogy. And then there's, you know, and Avengers is like obviously hard to do that too because you have to see it as a quadrilogy, and then it's like kind of plus Civil War. It's like you have, you know, if you didn't watch Civil War, you would like be missing out on so much.
Oh yeah,
I don't want
Avengers lore.
I don't want to piss off Dave here, but I feel like the Captain America movies, I love them. They're fantastic. I don't feel like they would fit in the category of trilogies because I feel like so much of those was the buildup of the Avengers. At least like the first one was fantastic. The first one was totally its own thing. But after that, I feel like those would be included in the Avengers movie. So I wouldn't feel like those.
Not Winter Soldier. Winter Soldier is its own.
But Civil War.
I think
Civil War, has the most characters, but it's still what's driving the entire thing is like Steve's choice and relationship with Bucky. But yeah, I mean, I could see that argument too, because you could also make the argument that it's almost in a way a dual protagonist movie with Tony Stark also, where he sort of becomes the antagonist, you know, and it's more of a thing where you could almost see both their perspectives. So like, yeah, I can totally see that.
Which
Yeah, and I think
that movie,
I think I think that this is the point, is that as far as trilogies goes, there's a ton of trilogies, and there's trilogies that are beloved, trilogies that I love. While I don't agree with your, your perception of Back to the Future, I am willing to admit the second one and the third one, especially third one, is my least favorite in that trilogy. The second one is I love that movie, but objectively, like, it doesn't make for a complete trilogy in the way that this does, where it's one set of characters. Sure, characters might come, characters might go, but it's one thread throughout that follows it beginning, middle, and end, and tells a beginning and middle and story. And I don't know, you're kind of convinced me on Civil War now. I think that's an interesting perspective that I didn't think about, but like Star Wars has that,
The problem with the second Back to the Future is Crispin Glover isn't in it. And that's like,
Yeah,
that's like
100%.
strike
And different
number one,
girlfriend,
dude.
too.
100%. And the fact that the filmmaker screwed him over and used hired an actor that
Stole
looked enough
him.
like him, and then used prosthetics from the first one to make him look, and then like build it as he was in there. There was actually a lawsuit he filed against the studio that
pretty
changed
crazy,
the
dude.
film
I heard that
industry.
shit,
Yeah.
yeah. They
There's
weren't
also a
allowed to
weird thing.
use-
If you asked me as a kid, I'd be like, the second one's my favorite. But then like it's harder to see that now, because like there's also like random things that were like inputted in the second one too, where it's like all of a sudden he's like no one calls me a chicken.
Yeah.
Like no one calls me.
Yeah.
That is like isn't in the first one at all, and you're
Yeah.
like, wait, what?
Yeah, the
Um,
first Back to the Future is a damn
It's
near
fantastic.
perfect movie.
We just recently watched it. And just kind of throw back to the string theory. I feel like Back to the Future, what you're talking about, it doesn't count as a trilogy because it's not a start and finish. I feel like that movie is like a string theory movie where it's like the same group of characters, but like a branch off where like in this reality, it's a Western. In this reality, it's the 1950s. And I feel like it's the same story told in
which-
different ways, which is like fantastic. Like what other movie does that?
Well, I
Yeah.
think
Besides The
in,
Evil
in
Dead.
terms of where to go, I think like that is the natural progression as you go back in time.
It's so
I
good,
mean,
dude.
that's what he did in the first one, but I just mean you take it back to an era that was so outside of, because I guess it mirrors the second one, because you go into the future so much that it, is so different from the reality he's living in. But I just mean like there's so many trilogies you can look at, and you'll watch, like I'll watch Back to the Future 3 with the other two because I love those movies so much. But objectively, to look at an entire trilogy as an overall encompassing story, there's not a lot. There's not a lot of stories.
I think I agree with you. It might be top 5, dude. It might be, 4 or 5 or perhaps 6, somewhere in there, like for sure. Because I think.
So what's your
It's,
top?
it's definitely
besides
fun. It's
Leprechaun?
definitely fun to talk about, to debate, and I love that kind of stuff. I love that nerd talk of like, well, no, because in this one, like it's my favorite.
Actually.
Actually, Marty says, "Hey Doc, a little bit too much in the second one."
Well, you can get away with a hey doc 3 times. But
3
once you
times.
hit 4, dude, I'm
It's
out.
I love circumventing the rule of 3, but not in the Back to the Futures that a hey Doc. Those are 3, dude.
Well, I guess we should kind of wrap this up. We're
Yeah.
definitely at time, but let us know in the comments if you guys have any opinions on that. We would love to hear them. What you thought of the movie, what you think maybe the best villains of the MCU are, or the best trilogies, how you would rank this in the grand scope of maybe in the MCU, and then also the grand scope of all movies, just how you feel about how it ranks as far as trilogies.
Yeah, let us know for sure. We love this kind of stuff. We do this all the time, so we'd love, I love different perspectives on movies, and I love kind of seeing something from a different angle that I might not have seen it the first or second or third time. So as Dave said, let us know, if you want to come back. We do this every week. Make sure you subscribe, and you like, and you tell your friends, and you interact with us on social media. We love that kind of stuff. So we got a bunch of content coming out in the in the next few weeks, and we'd love to have hear your feedback on it.
Every subscription we get is actually a baby raccoon that is saved.
Yeah.
So just think of it in terms of that. It's like when an angel gets its wings, but it's baby raccoons and stuff.
And don't think of it in terms of doing something nice for us. Do it for PETA, right? Because we all want to be in their good graces, and we want to be, a +1 in their ledger. So,
Yeah, you don't want to piss PETA off, so you should subscribe if you don't want to piss PETA off.
And as always, if you disagree with Vince, explicitly state that in the comments. You know, we'll
Yeah.
make sure that he reads it and
If
is
you
affected by
disagree
it.
with me or Eli, you might be wrong. We'll see.
Sure.
But Vince is no holds barred.
Yeah, and you know, I thank you guys for coming on the stream. This was a good talk. I feel like this was probably our best movie talk we've done yet, and I think it's awesome because I think that really is indicative of the kind of movie that this was, and this is something special. And also, as kind of a last note, I just want to remind everybody: as soon as we hit 100 subscribers, which we're not far from on YouTube, Vince will wear a belly shirt the entire episode,
Is
and
that
he
true?
will stand up.
Clip
He
it.
said it. He'll do jumping jacks.
Alright.
He'll do anything that the chat asks him
Yes.
to do.
Okay, I like that.
But you have to be live on stream to request it.
There you
Vince
go.
is a little
None
kind
of
of a
this
little
comment
tease,
shit.
and he kind of teased us with the Munster shirt, but maybe
Yeah.
we'll get to see it.
You want to see
I-
Grandpa?
Everybody wants to see Vince in a crop top. Thanks, guys. We'll see you next week.
Or if you don't want to see it, just don't tune in when that happens, because
Yeah.
that's
We're also sensitive to the fact if the audience doesn't want it, we don't have to.
Maybe
do it.
if we
It's
get
more of a joke.
100, Vince will not do it. And
I'll
if
just slip
we
in your
don't get
DMs.
that, he's gonna do it every time on every.
Maybe if we hit 100, Vince can wear an extra large shirt, and then we can avoid the whole issue.
done.
We'll do whatever you want, is what we're saying.
We'll do whatever you guys want. We are beholden to you. Okay, bye. See you
Bye,
guys.
bye, guys.